purpose of this meeting is to relate to our user groups, the official sources, and some of the uses of our soil survey information, and to hear about our ongoing soil survey projects and receive feedback from users about how they're using the data, what they find most useful, and what they'd like to see in the future. We intend to cover a lot of information, so we won't be going into great depth on all topics. If there's a need, however, we can put together a follow-up workshop to address any of the specific subjects that we cover here. So, but we'd want to hear from you about that. So this is very much about exchanging information and in a way, us trying to figure out what you'd like to see more of. So I'd like to start by reviewing the agenda, and then we'll get going. So here we are. We're going to start off looking at soil survey official data sources. Tasha Harder, our resource soil scientist here, is going to cover that. Then we'll move on to using notes on using soil survey data plus prime farmland designations. How are those determined? From there, we'll go to other programs using our data. Oh, I'm sorry. And Shanna Bernal-Fields will be covering using the soil survey data and the prime farmland. For that, I'll cover other programs that use our data. I'm going to focus mainly on SoilWeb and using SoilWeb and Google Earth Pro. After that, we will talk about new soil interpretations in web soil survey and some in development. So haven't quite made it web soil survey yet, but we're working on it. We'll take a short break after that, and then we'll move on to the MLRA leaders to talk about active soil survey operations from around the state. And then Tasha, Shanna, and I will talk about state soil staff update project. And then it's open floor after that. We'd like to hear from any of our partners, whether they want to talk to us about how they're using the data or they've got questions for us. It's open discussion for the last part. So, and just to let folks know that I might not be real familiar with NRCS, we've got a couple different flavors of soil scientists with you here today. We are part of the state soil staff. We work for the state conservationists here with NRCS Idaho. And then the MLRA leaders, they're responsible for producing the soil survey information that we use, and they're part of the Soil and Plant Science Division. And it's not uncommon for folks like Shanna and myself to have come up through Soil and Plant Science Division and then join the state conservationist staff. So we're well familiar with one another, but for those that are uninitiated, thought you might appreciate that. So here I'm going to turn it over to Tasha Harder, our resource soil scientist, and let her take it away.
I'll turn my camera on just for a moment to introduce myself so you can see who I am. Tasha Harder, I'm a resource soil scientist here in Boise. So I'm going to kick things off by talking about soil survey official data sources today. So let me get my presentation going. Okay. So I'll be covering these topics quickly and showing the different places to find and work with soil survey data. So I'm going to talk about web soil survey, how to download SSURGO data to work with data outside of web soil survey. And to do that, you'll use SSURGO Portal and SSURGO On Demand. And just a reminder, SSURGO stands for Soil Survey Geographic Database. It includes the spatial and tabular soils data, soil survey data. And then I'll talk about archived soil surveys, and I'll wrap this up with how to find soil survey lab data. There we go. Okay. So starting with Web Soil Survey, this is your official source for the most up-to-date soil survey data. In the picture to the right, you see, in the picture to the right, you can see that you first establish your area of interest. It's that light blue boundary surrounding some cropland, and then you generate a custom soil map of that area. So that the orange delineations on the soil map on the screen are soil map units, and those are groupings of different soils across the landscape. And just remember that each of those soil map units can contain multiple soils grouped together. The data within Web Soil Survey is refreshed annually in the first week of October. And this means that survey areas might be updated or new survey areas may be added to the database. Also, new soil interpretations can be added, which we're going to talk about more later. So to access Web Soil Survey, it's really easy. Just Google Web Soil Survey. I'm going to quickly demonstrate how you can do this in a web browser. So click that first link for Web Soil Survey Home. And then that big green button launches Web Soil Survey. So your first step is to set your area of interest, or AOI, which is this first tab here on the left. It's really easy to import an AOI here using a zipped shapefile. I'm going to go ahead and do that with an example AOI. But you can also zoom to a location using any of these quick navigation options, and then draw a custom AOI. And the Idaho NRCS YouTube channel has tutorials on how to use Web Soil Survey in great detail. If you're brand new to this, I won't be going into a lot of detail today. I just mostly want to direct you to where to find soils data. So I've imported my AOI, click Set AOI. Okay, and then I can go to the Soil Map tab to see that soil map that was generated for our AOI. You see that loading on the screen. And then we have our map unit legend there on the left. Shawn is going to talk more about the Soil Data Explorer later, which is the next tab over up here. And she'll talk about generating ratings and displaying the properties, limitations, and suitabilities on the soil map. So there are a lot of options for working with SSURGO data within Web Soil Survey. And for many people, this is probably, might be the best and easiest way to work with SSURGO data. However, the SSURGO data can also be downloaded for further analysis outside of Web Soil Survey, such as in an ArcGIS project. And to do that, you go to the Download Soil Data tab right over here. So your options for downloading are to download by your AOI or by a whole soil survey area, which is approximately the county areas. I have an AOI set, so I can go in here and click Create Download Link. And a zip file is generated down here at the bottom, and you just click that to download your file. There's also StatsGo data here at the bottom. And this is extremely coarse scale data. It's really good for state or regional level general soil maps. And a really important thing to note, if you're working with downloaded SSURGO data, is to check the date. It's a good practice to re-download your data following the annual soil data refresh every October. But jumping back to the PowerPoint now. So once SSURGO data is downloaded, you can work with it using the SSURGO portal. I want to give a heads up that using SSURGO data outside of Web Soil Survey, it does allow for more flexibility in types of analysis and maps generated, but it does require more GIS knowledge. So I'd consider tools like SSURGO Portal and SSURGO On Demand best suited for more advanced GIS users. SSURGO Portal is a future access point for soils data at NRCS, as it's moving away from Microsoft Access databases. Soon you might be able to download SSURGO data here as well as through Web Soil Survey. So it's a new NRCS application. It's open source, and it can be used in ArcGIS and QGIS. And what it does is it creates empty template databases that you can import your SSURGO data into. So the tables in the template have established relationships, and the table columns already have defined data types. And this just makes it really easy to join and relate your data. And there are several user guides and download instructions on the NRCS website for this. But once you've created a template database in the portal, you can access data with any software that reads SQLite files, including ArcGIS Pro, QGIS, and the other ones listed here. So for example, you can use ArcGIS Pro to query the database, view soil map unit polygons, create maps of select soil properties outside of Web Soil Survey. In this photo, you can see the template database in the catalog of ArcGIS on the right, and some soil map units displayed over name imagery. So SSURGO On Demand is a tool that's used in the GIS environment also. And you can use it to duplicate what's done in Web Soil Survey and generate maps of different soil properties or limitations that are aggregated to the map unit level. And the user has more control over the map that's generated, from the data aggregation method to specific soil depth ranges to symbology of the map. And it provides a lot of the same functions as Soil Data Viewer, which in the past was used to work with SSURGO template databases. A new version of Soil Data Viewer is currently under development, and it will eventually be added to the SSURGO Portal tool. But in the meantime, this is the tool to use. So this graphic gives an example of what you can do with SSURGO On Demand. You can generate new tables of soil properties and interpretations in that Soil On Demand window. In this case, the parameters I have set are the weighted average of the total clay percent in a depth range of 0 to 100 centimeters. And then you just join the new table to soil map unit polygons in the GIS project. So I joined it to a whole soil survey area, in this case, Latop County. And the average clay percent is symbolized into 5 different classes. And so this is the outcome. And the dark blue areas have greater percent clay content. So if you're familiar with the GIS environment, this tool makes it pretty straightforward to compute a single value for a map unit that might have numerous different soils in it and display the results. And again, the installation and user guide for this are on the SSURGO Portal website. Now I'm going to change gears slightly and talk about archived soil surveys. These are another really great data source that I want to highlight. These are historical soil survey records. So the earliest soil survey published for Idaho was for the Boise area, published in 1901, which predates the NRCS as an agency by several decades. This was completed by the USDA Bureau of Soils. So soil surveys were formerly published in print, and now everything is digital through Web Soil Survey. These early manuscripts have been scanned and converted to PDFs and are available online. And I'm just going to show you where to find them and some of the useful content inside. So one easy way to find these archived soil surveys is going through Web Soil Survey. You click the link at the top of the page that's right above the soil map tab there. And that will take you to a different web page where you can search archived surveys by state and then by county of interest. Some counties have multiple archived surveys, which you can see there. Minidoka has an initial soil survey from 1908 and then an updated survey in 1975. And you can preview these online or download them. And there's a recording on the Idaho NRCS YouTube channel that goes into a lot of detail on how to find these also. So now I'll just highlight some of the info stored in these, but keep in mind that these are for historical purposes, that the most up-to-date official data is available within Web Soil Survey. So these archived surveys contain historical context for each survey area, and they discuss things like development, agricultural history, water supply, implementation of irrigation districts, etc. They also have some really interesting historical imagery vegetation management, and different notable soil features. So this one shows a roadbed failure that's occurring in a map unit in Ada County. Also information about soil formation and just the large-scale geologic processes that led to soils we see today. Map unit descriptions, talking about parent material, depth classes, and high-level land uses and limitations for use. And these block diagrams are visuals of what soil series are associated with what parts of the landscape. They also contain a general soil map. This is a really high-level map generalized to the scale of an entire survey area. So this is all of Ada County here. These are helpful to get a general sense of the soils in a new area. And there are also more detailed map sheets with map units drawn over aerial imagery. And then lastly, we want to talk about soil survey lab data. So some soils are sent to the Kellogg Soil Survey Lab, which is KSSL, to measure soil properties as part of the National Cooperative Soil Survey. And that data is available in a database called Lab Data Mart. So there are different kinds of characterization reports available. The primary characterization report is the most common one, but there's others that you see here, like a geochemical characterization report, taxonomy report, etc. And this database has analytical data for more than 20,000 petons of US soils. To access Lab Data Mart, you go to the NCSS query page, and you can do a basic search of the database, searching by state, county, soil series name, classification type, etc. Or you can also search spatially on the locator map on the same page, and you can see what kind of or what lab data is available from soils sampled in proximity to your project area. And this is just a snapshot of an example of a primary characterization report. I'm not going to go into depth on these reports today because they are really dense, really full of information. But the bullet points show the different sections of information on the report. You can see a soil name at the top. This is for the soil Seabury. It has the taxonomy, horizonation, and all of these physical and chemical soil properties reported on horizon by horizon. So this report is several pages long. There are also codes for specific lab tests that were used to gather this data. So again, these are just really dense. They usually require some digging to find the information you're looking for. I mostly want to bring them to your attention that these are available. And if you have more questions about them, just definitely get in touch. So I will leave you with my contact information here on the screen. And this QR code, if you scan it, will take you to a Google Drive folder with all of the links for resources we're mentioning this afternoon and our PowerPoint presentations for you to reference. So I will now, I have a few minutes for questions if anyone had a quick question, but I'm going to hand it off to Shanna for the next presentation.
Okay. Hi, everybody. I'm Shawn Bernal-Fields, resource scientist here in Boise, Idaho. And I'm going to be talking to you a couple times today, but Tasha's going to be my moderator.
Oh, yeah, just 1 second. All right, you're ready.
Okay, great. So I think it's important that our users have a basic understanding of how the data is created and its intended use and scale. Otherwise, you can make some wild assumptions and maybe not apply it in the way it's intended. So I want to start with a brief overview of how we make soil surveys and how it should be utilized. All right, so foundational. So if we boil down soil science to like one key concept that I'd like you to know by the time you walk away today, it's the 5 soil forming factors. Acronym is CLORT. Climate, organisms, release, parent material, and time. So if you ever wondered why one soil looks different than the other, this is the why. If you change any one of these factors, you should expect a different soil to develop. I gave a lot of weight when I was mapping the parent material in particular. Thinking of like a volcanic soil, which makes more clays as it weathers versus sandstone to give you a more coarse grain, so like a rich soil. The key properties of these soil forming factors are what we're thinking of when we're mapping. So that's how the lines get put on the map is and where we're finding the soil changes is with one of these shifts in the landscape. Historically, our soil surveys have focused a lot on documenting inherent properties. I think soils are like people. There are certain properties that are inherited from like genetic from their parent rock. And then there are other properties that are pretty dynamic and they're influenced more by management and the environment. So like I said, we're doing soil survey. There's a national priority called the 2026, which is what our soil survey side of the house is focused on, wrapping up, having total coverage of the US at some degree of scale by the end of 2026. But then the future soil survey is going to start focusing more on those dynamic soil properties that are influenced by management decisions. Also, update projects become more prevalent. That's, again, one of the reasons for today's meeting is to share with you some of the things that we've been working on and looking for future soil data needs for long-term planning. Soil survey. So how's it done? I've gotten this question many times. So how many holes do you need to dig? Well, we're not really mapping holes. We're mapping a repeating concept across the landscape. So it varies. You're going to want to pay attention, though, when you're using our data of the scale at which it was collected. So depending on your project, the data might be sufficient, especially if you're doing some broader landscape planning. Other times you're doing something very site specific, like a septic system. That's at a finer scale than most of our data, and you're going to need to do an on-site investigation. The common scales currently used are 1 to 12,000 for ag lands and 1 to 24,000 on public range and forest, which is pretty typical. Being a quality product, it's very well respected. We've been doing this over a century. We're not only national leaders, but world leaders in soils. We teach other countries how to do this. But soil surveys are created at a certain scale at a specific point in time. And so as Tasha mentioned, we've have over 100 years, technology's changed, our understanding has changed. So soil survey technically will never be done. We'll continually update it as user needs change. All right, mapping design. Kind of important to understand a little bit about this. Common misconception from some users is they think that when they see a polygon on the map, that means there's only one soil in there. And that is not correct. Depending on the map unit design, you could have anywhere from 1 to 3 named major soil components, and several minors whose name is not in that map. So the two most common is what we call a consociation, which has one dominant named soil, and so they can have a bunch of minors too, 1% of this, 2% of that. And then complexes, and a complex has 2 to 3 co-dominant named soils. And so depending on your project needs, it's important to verify which of those components you're standing in. That's where I say sometimes you still need to do some field work and on-site investigations. One of the ways to kind of tease out where you are in the world is by reading the map unit description. We call it MUD for short, and that'll give you some clues onto where each soil lives on the landscape. You can look at the landform, the slope, sometimes it's a certain microfeature. So web soil surveying does a variety of products. The main ones are, it'll make you some personalized reports with, you can make colored thematic maps. In this example, this is showing a map of a soil feature called the Durapan, aka a hard pan, Leaching. And it will also do tabular reports and data as well. And it'll give you usually a narrative with a numeric rating as well as the color themed map. Web soil survey is a very powerful tool. So this slide is more for our advanced user. So the data, again, we don't map holes, we map concepts. It's not representing a single point. It's a soil theory concept, a map unit concept, and it's aggregated. Some interpretations allow you the option to personalize and aggregate in different methods. And this allows you to tease out more nuanced answers to some questions. perhaps you wanted to know the most limiting soil in a given area rather than the most common, or you want the weighted average of something, or the dominant condition. If you try these different aggregation methods on the same location, you're going to get different looking map outputs. Again, this is an advanced setting. When in doubt, you can stick with the defaults and they'll most of the time get you what you need. But I just wanted to let you know this is an option. So one scenario, for example, say we had a complex with 3 soils, alpha, beta, Charlie. Alpha's at 45%, beta's at 35%, Charlie's at 20%. If you ask Web Soil Survey, tell me the dominant condition, which is usually, or the dominant component, that's usually the default, it would give you alpha and say that's a sandy loam. And then you wanted to know the texture. It's going to spit out an output, say sandy loam. But then say I change the aggregation and I say I want to know the dominant condition. And say beta and Charlie, which make up 55% total, which would outweigh alpha, will go clay loams. Then that would give, then if I ran it that way, I would get a different output saying that map unit was mostly clay. Give you a visual of that. You know, like, first time you hear that, you're like, what? So here's a visual example. So this is just a snapshot of somewhere in Ada County. I ran an interpretation using 2 different aggregation methods. So the image on your left is using the dominant component method, and the image on the right is using the least limiting method. And if you look at the southeast quadrant, which I can usually point to that one, you'll notice on the image on the left, you see a lot of red and yellow, versus the image on the right, it's a lot more green. So just to show you that you can get different output depending on what question you ask it. So obviously, as Tasha showed, if you're a GIS user and you put this in ArcPro or whatever program du jour, you have a lot of flexibility. And this is just an option for those of you in Web Soil Survey. If you don't have GIS software, you can still do some pretty advanced things. All right, we're going to talk more about interps in a little bit, but there's over 100 Idaho. So the file structure, it's easy to get lost in, but this is a key feature that I use a lot, and I definitely like to share with our users. When you're trying to figure out what soil data do I need or what should I look at, we have this wonderful keyword search option right at the top. So in this example, I typed in grazing, and it will automatically go through those 180 plus interps and pull all the ones that have that keyword in it and hot link them. So then when you click the hot link, it'll zoom right to it, tell it run the interp, and there it is. So you don't have to go hunting around the website trying to figure out where's that report that I wanted. All right, suitabilities and limitations. So when we're developing soil interpretations, they can be written either in a positive term as a suitability, in which case something with a score 1 is good, or it can be written in negative terms as a limitation, in which case a score 1 is bad. So you kind of have to pay attention to the wording as a suitability or limitation. So the ratings given to score a soil component are given for a scenario. It's, we're doing a prediction. This is a direct measurement. And also the caution, so when you get these ratings, it'll say, oh, it's, poorly suited, fairly suited, well suited. Just because something is poor doesn't mean that you can't do what you're trying to do. It just means that it's not naturally suited to that, and it's going to require additional inputs compared to a soil with more naturally conducive properties. So here's an example of that. Here I ran septic tank absorption fields on Washington County, Idaho. And you can see in the image, there's a lot of red there. It's a rural county. Obviously, people live outside of town. They've got houses, they've got septic systems. So yeah, it's just meaning that they're probably going to have needed more complex septic system design or additional maintenance to remain functional. You also notice the output. So it gave me the thematic map, but also below that is the tabular data. And for each map unit, it gives it a score and it identifies the reason of why it scored the way it did. All right. If you really want to take a deep dive and you want to know how the algorithm is scoring a given soil or map unit, I suggest you read the description. So here's a snapshot of the menu. You'll see Web Soil Survey. You have a button that says view description or view rating. If you open up that view description, here's that same one for the septic tank absorption field. And it has a very detailed narrative of what properties it's pulling and how it's scoring. All right, shifting gears on you. So the second half of this segment is going to be on farmland classification, which is a common topic we hear from local governments, especially planning, zoning. And the image here in the middle is a snapshot of the the designations from Web Soil Survey for an area for prime farmland. But I'm going to give you a really fast. This can be a contentious and detailed subject, but I'm going to give you a real broad overview of it. Next slide. So one of the questions we've heard is under whose authority do we have to make these designations in the first place? Well, we have the Code of Federal Regulations. Here is your legal citation giving us, the agency, the authority to do this work. So the fact that it's published CFR does say a lot, that that's a lengthy process with public comment. And this was finalized back in the late 70s. This has been on the books. So continue on, here's another snapshot where it gets into more detail. I think it was 11 parameters, but basically you can condense those down to 3 criteria based on climatic, chemical, and physical properties. Starting with the climate. All these things have very detailed definitions. Soil science is like any other specialty. We have our own professional jargon, in this case, taxonomy as well. So we have a publication, Keys to Soil Taxonomy, that has definitions germane to the following slides. And I have a link to them. So some of the common temperature regimes that we'll find in Idaho, starting like low on the landscape, and we'll step up conceptually. First off is in the southern part, mesic. That's a relatively warm area, a long growing season. We can grow most crops. It's native river plain kind of area. If you step up from the landscape, get up to the hills, a little bit cooler, a little bit shorter growing season. That's frigid. Slide. If you keep going up higher in the mountains, you'll hit the cryotic zone, which is very cold. This is a major limitation for several of our Idaho soils. I just want to highlight the fact that if you read the legalese, it is explicitly stated that cryotic soils cannot be rated as prime. Swapping over to moisture regimes. Acidic, that's just means hot and dry. That's the desert part of the state. Arid. So this is the next step up. We have a lot of acidic bordering there and there down in the southern half of the state. This is a Mediterranean climate, cool wet winters, hot dry summers. One, Udic. These soils are a little more humid and moist for more of the year than the other two regimes. Oxalic. These are your saturated soils. I usually picture river floodplains, very wet. Okay, so that was a quick view of the climate. Now let's look at some chemical properties. On exchangeable sodium percentage, ESP. So sodium can be problematic in high amounts. It causes dispersion. It breaks down our soil beds apart, degrades the structure, causes plugging, ponding problems. So that's one of the factors that we look at for prime farmland. We don't want too many salts, or sodium in particular. Electrical conductivity refers to other salts besides sodium. Also, we don't want in high doses because that can create problems where nutrients are unavailable and you get deficiencies in your plant growth. Right, this is negatively impacted. Okay. That's our chemical. Now moving over to physical properties of interest. First one, K factor. This is a water erosion index. KW means that we got the whole soil, including the rocks. KF is for the finer fraction. They're just looking at the mineral part and ignoring the rocks. That goes into a calculation. I factor, this is a wind erosion related to soil aggregate size and wind erodibility groups associated with that as well. Next one. C factor. This is another climate erosion index with a wind component to it. Garden City, Kansas is the control, and that everybody else in the nation is compared against. So for example, an area with a C factor of 50 gets a value half that of Garden City, Kansas. Next one, permeability and saturated hydraulic conductivity. This refers to how water moves through the soil profile. You'll often see these terms in soils related documents. Sometimes you'll hear them used interchangeably, which is incorrect. They are similar. There is a proportional relationship between these measurements, but they are not identical. They're not definitive. Permeability was much more common in our older survey products. KSAT is now the preferred measurement in modern soil standards. Okay, so boil that all down to a quick table of prime versus farmland of statewide importance criterion. The brown columns on the left, these first half dozen parameters are pretty much identical in their verbiage or meaning. Where they differ is on the right in the blue columns, because obviously our prime farmland is supposed to be best of the best. It has the most stringent requirements. The farmland statewide importance has a little bit wider sidebars to qualify. But basically, prime soils are less salty, have more neutral pH, are less erodible by wind and climatic factors, and less rocky than the other soils. So like if you look at the upper right, for example, the soil salinity. So for it to be prime, you have to have a score of less than 4 on the ESP versus statewide importance, it has to be less than 8. So I'll let you dive into that at your leisure later. Okay, next slide. Another common question we get is who all was involved when these decisions were made, and did the state have a voice? So soil surveys are not created in a vacuum. It includes many partners. And yes, it was my understanding that historically in Idaho, various entities were involved, including the University of Idaho, Conservation Commission, soil and water conservation districts, have all throughout surveys in the state. Another question we often get is, was land use considered? Really, no. This classification is a potential, and it's based on soil properties. So you'll see designations with if statements. They'll say prime if drained, prime if irrigated, prime if like salt reclaimed. So it doesn't matter if the condition has been enacted, it's a potential. All right. What if someone really wants to change it? Like devil's advocate here for a moment. We've had some people that are very passionate about personal reasons of why they wanted a classification changed. There is a formal process for revising soils data, and it's in the National Soil Survey Handbook. However, it has to be a sound science-based argument, and we have to be a conceptual change. Remember, we don't map holes. This would never be changed on a whim for an individual field. It's a formal process, and like I said, it has to apply to that soil concept across its full extent, and it's not going to be changed for political reasons. It needs to be scientific. All right, and then that's what I got for this segment. I'll pass it back. Oh, sorry, no, I had one more. My apologies. Where can you find the prime farmland information? So there's 2 locations: Web Soil Survey. There's a report you can generate, and the link will be in this. You can access the QR code. Or the second site is we call soil data access, and you can just pick state, and then it'll give you, I think usually the whole state at the time, And then, so there's snapshots of both locations where you can get the prime farmland designation.
Excellent job. Thank you, Shanna. That was really good. As we transition to other programs that use our data, maybe we can launch a poll or 2.
Yep.
And I'll get this set up. So you just sent one out. There we go. Yeah, this speaks to the topic at hand directly. I use the following to view soils data. Click all that apply: Web Soil Survey, SoilWeb, Google Earth Pro. I'm going to be talking about SoilWeb and Google Earth Pro. And then, you know, for our users, those that use soil survey data with some frequency, and analyze, use that in some sort of analysis fashion. What's the program that you use? ArcPro, ArcMap, QGIS, etc. Wow, we're flying fast and furious with the polls here. And then a question, this one's kind of fun, about what a soil interpretation is. Now, we just talked about prime farmland, which is based on soil properties, well, I'll just let you read the question, and you can click multiple on that one. So, and then we are game for helping anyone with soils information. And if you'd like a follow up with us, you can please indicate that in that poll, and we should be able to tell who would like additional follow up. So it's excellent. All right. So I'm going to start with a slide and then transition to a live demo. We'll play that by ear. I've got some slides that kind of duplicate this, duplicate the live demo. If we can pull off the live demo and not have it be jerky or otherwise just inferior, then we'll use the live demo. But when I go away from this slide, I'm going to need folks to let me know if they're having issues on there and viewing what I'm trying to show them. So at any rate, we will start in with this, other programs utilizing our data. And while there are several programs that do, I think SoilWeb is the most common. It's been jointly developed between NRCS and UC Davis. It contains much of the same soil information as what you will find on Web Soil Survey, but it's presented in a different format. SoilWeb can be accessed from a mobile phone and offers a locate feature represented by a little icon that you can see on the screen there. It looks like crosshairs. And it'll bring the soil survey data and aerial imagery centered on your present location. So that's kind of a handy tool in the field. Additionally, it provides some graphical displays of soil properties and extents, as well as handy links to official series descriptions and lab data and several other things. So we'll look at that. We'll also look at, if the live demo works good, I'd like to show you some live action of pulling SoilWeb information into Google Earth Pro for 3D visualization of soil lines. So it's got there's some great features, some great capabilities, but it's also limited in comparison to Web Soil Survey because you're really looking at data at an individual point on the ground. You're not able to generate reports and tables for multiple map units or compile a slick PDF report of everything that you've looked at and all the maps you've generated, like Web Soil Survey can do. So it's limited in that fashion, but I think it's got a lot going for it. So thought it would be important for us to look at it. And let's see if I can pull off a live demo here. Again, let me know if this starts going really slow on anyone's end, or they're not getting anything, they're not seeing anything. Just wanted to show you briefly, you can go to Google and type in SoilWeb. The two things that come up, you'll get the online tool here, and then you'll get an option for SoilWeb apps. And there's several different apps based on soil properties that come from our data. So, but we'll start with the online soil survey browser. And is that coming up? All right. Good deal. Okay, so just remembered the last place that I was at. And I'm going to zoom out here. You've got some options for different types of imagery that you can utilize. You can change the outline color to a darker color. It'll indicate the lat long that you're where your cursor's at. If, let's say we want to go, I want to go to a particular location, I can click the zoom to location button and enter a location. I want to go to Pingree as an example. So the web connection is a little bit slow. I'll have to limit what I do here somewhat. There's an interesting spot I wanted to show you. Taking a long time to refresh. That's over the web. We'll just work with whatever it comes up with here. I don't know if I'm in the spot that I really wanted to show you, but for demonstration purposes, I think we should be able to use whatever paints up. You know, I got to say I was a little more optimistic than Shanna was on the idea of doing a live demo. I thought, you know, we've got great connections. This should be no problem. We should be able to do this. And
I feel very.
yes. So this is being a little bit painful. All right. Well, I'm wondering if it will let me proceed as if it's got the whole picture painted up just fine here. I'm going to click a map unit that it does have painted up here over on the left-hand side. I got my cursor over there. I'm going to click in it. I want to show you what it comes up with here. I just don't think it has it loaded. I might have to go back to the slides. Dang it. Okay. All right. So a map unit, and I apologize for the display issues here. Any map unit that you click in, it will bring up an aggregated data for the map unit. It'll give you the map unit name at the top, and then moving down here, it'll give you additional information that you might find important, like whether it's that map unit's considered prime farmland, what the on average the available water storage is in the rooting zone, what its flooding and ponding frequency is, what its drainage class is for its dominant condition or wettest component, if there's a hydric soil involved, what the annual water table depth is and what the growing season water table depth is. If you've got bedrock in the profile, where does that come in? And our typical depth of observation is 150 or 200 centimeters. And so if it's beyond that, bedrock won't be noted there. But here for this Portino soil, 71 centimeters. So important stuff that you're wanting to note there. To get to the component level information, this is 85% Portino, so that's the dominant thing here. We can click on a component and get additional information displayed for us that goes not only by horizon, but it'll give us graphical displays of that as well. Let's flip back over to this. I can move through this pretty quick and get us back to where we were kind of at. So we talked about that. We talked about the aggregated map unit data. And then I think this was already explained earlier. You might notice that it gives publish and export date on these. And I've been asked about that before. While the data remains largely the same since 1968, in some cases it's been updated, and in all cases, we've taken the liberty to add additional interpretations and soil reports for Web Soil Survey. And when we do that, we have to re-export the survey. So all surveys get exported every year. And so that's what that export date of 2023 is about. And that's why it's different than the published date. So moving along from there. So if you click on the individual component name, it will come up with a soil sketch that's based on the official series description for that soil and gives out the horizonation. Depths are in centimeters. Any of the other properties that you see there, you can click on, and they will give you a graphic display for a particular property and will indicate that by depth. So in the bottom, we see organic matter, and this soil, they're indicating it drops off at 30 centimeters. It goes way low. At the top of the page that you get, and maybe I need to go back one and point this out. So when you click on a component, let me grab my pointer, drag it over here. Laser pointer is probably better. How about that? When you click on a component, you get these additional options up here that are highlighted. And I'm going to, in this next slide, is going to show you what you get when you click on Soil Data Explorer. When you click on Soil Data Explorer, you get a completely new window that opens in your browser, and it gives you a series of tabs with access to additional data, like the official series description. I'll go through a couple of these. The slides I prepared didn't go through all of them. I knew we wouldn't have time, but we'll start with official series description. That's the recognized modal example of the named soil, and a named component within a survey will fall within this range of characteristics. So that's the idea. As an example, the Kamama series official description looks like this. It gives you a ton of information about Kamama, where you can find it on the landscape, what its parent material is, its climate, as well as detailed information on the horizons, what its taxonomy is. Moving along, if you click on the lab data tab, this is an example of Pancherry, which is mapped in that same area. If you clicking on that, will tell you that the KSSL has, which Tasha talked about earlier, has 6 pedons on file for Pancherry, and it gives you graphical display of the soil properties as they were measured in the lab. It also gives you the links to where those are at, so you can click on those links and it'll take you. And in fact, I think that's where we started. I was in that spot on Pancherry. That's where that screen started, because I had clicked on that link. So I skipped over a number of these: water balance, sibling summary, competing series. I encourage you to explore those when you've got some time to look at them. They're all very informative, and particularly in terms of taxonomy, competing series and shared subgroup are kind of mind-blowing, very handy. And to be honest with you, I did not know about it. I think it had been a while since I've been in SoilWeb. Shared subgroup really kind of blew my mind. Block diagrams, when you look at block diagrams, if there's block diagrams available, choose one that's closest to the area that you're in. It so happens that there's one here for Bingham. And this is an area typified by basalt flows where we've got less laid in over the top of basalt. We've got, if you look at the corners of this block diagram, you've got Thornic and Tenno, or shallow bedrock soils. Getting a little bit deeper on the sides, Portino and Pilatus, and then in the center, Portneuf and Pancheri, and their primary differences. Well, amongst a lot of them, the differences in a lot of these soils come down to carbonates and argillic horizons, so clay content and related characteristics. The Soil Data Explorer for a particular series, if you have a, let's see, this one I had up was, it doesn't list the series here, does it? Oh, it is Kamama, it's right there. The Kamama Soil Series. Unfortunately, I pulled examples from multiple soils, multiple map units for the slides, and so I'm flipping around a little bit here. But yeah, this is for the Kamama, and this is where this soil lives on the planet. This is its natural habitat. It's kind of useful to see, particularly if this soil that you're looking at, it has some sort of restrictive feature or some other really key property that you're interested in. It's kind of nice to see where it lives. SoilWeb Earth. So shifting gears, SoilWeb Earth is a file that you can add to Google Earth Pro. And so you get SoilWeb in a Google Earth Pro environment. It allows you 3D visualization of soil survey, offers multiple dates of aerial imagery missing a Y there, by using a time slider. So I don't know if you've used Google Earth Pro, but that is a really handy thing if you want to look at change through time, having multiple dates of imagery going back to basically what is 1985 satellite data up to current day high resolution aerial photography. So SoilWeb Earth and Google Earth Pro are free. And we've got links available so that you can go, and that's in the code that Tasha provided and in links that we're providing with the presentation here. Let's see if, so SoilWeb Earth, if you go to the SoilWeb apps page, you'll see this graphic. If you click on it, it'll want to download a KML file, which is funny because the file is actually a KMZ file, which just means it's a zipped KML file. At any rate, you can drag that file once you've got it on your machine. You can drag it into the Places window on Google Earth Pro, and soil lines will appear overlaying on your imagery. This is an example of an area on the outskirts of Boise. You can see some repeating pattern here with the 3062 map unit and the 3058 map unit being associated with hill slopes. The 3043 unit being associated with drainage ways. When in here, because you're looking at this in oblique view with some, Google Earth's terrain feature loaded underneath it, it just provides that context, that landscape context that I think makes the mapping more understandable. And so it's just a very useful tool. And if we had it live, I might try it live depending on time. If somebody can check me for time, and if we've got it all, I can see if we can do it. But multiple imagery from multiple dates where that might come in handy. This Kamama map unit polygon here caught my attention. I wasn't looking for it. I was in SoilWeb and I was navigating to a different location, and saw it, and it caught my eye, and I clicked on it. The SoilWeb info said that it was there was no hydric component in it, and which seemed kind of wrong. Actually, the mapping is not wrong at all. This, as it turns out, this is right next, and I looked at the imagery over time in Google Earth Pro, and this I don't think this site was always used as an aquifer recharge point. But as it turns out, that's a little Google research. Idaho Department of Water Resources has a map, and I believe this is indicated as the Hilton spill. And this is a recharge point. And these Kamama map units are somewhat depressional, and so it makes sense that they might use that map unit as in this spot on the Aberdeen-Springfield Canal as a spill point to accomplish aquifer recharge. At any rate, those the Google Earth time slider imagery was pretty useful for that. Just answered a question real fast for me. And again, SoilWeb functionality is available in there. It won't generate that map unit aggregated data, but it will give you the component data. And then if you click on one of the sketches, it will launch that new page with the Soil Data Explorer, the lab data, all the rest of it. And you notice a little P here in the corner of these sketches. So these sketches are utilizing data from what we call the component PEDON, the kind of representative PEDON for the survey or MLRA. Just a note there, instead of being based off the OSD, it's actually drawing the sketches from something that's maybe more specific. Real easy to, you can share these locations. If you're using SoilWeb, you can right click on a spot that you're interested in, and this little window pops up, and you can paste that into a email or whatever, send it, put it in Teams, whatever, send it to somebody, and it will open an instance of SoilWeb at that point. So if I was looking at that Kamama map unit and sent it to Shawn, I was like, hey, look at this. Does this look weird to you that there's no hydric or whatever? She can click on it, open it up, and it'll take her right to that map unit. In Google Earth, Google Earth's got a lot of functionality that I really haven't even scratched the surface of. But one of the things that's pretty handy is just you can drop a pin in something and give it a different name, and then you can save that as a KMZ file. And similarly, if you send that to somebody and they click on it, it should instigate Google Earth Pro and take the user to that point. So, all right, that brings us to that. Probably we're at a break point in the agenda, aren't we? For interps. Let's see, do we have enough time to see if Google Earth Pro would work live? Oh, we're a few minutes over. Okay. Yeah, we can see if we can get back to it at the end. We might be able to accomplish that. I'll ditch this one.
I want to work on topic, my last one. Soil interpretations. This is our meat potatoes product that most users utilize the most part. Next slide. So first off, let's clarify what an interpretation is, and it is a prediction of performance, not a direct measurement. Our product is great for initial analysis, for landscape planning, but like I mentioned earlier, sometimes you'll need more site-specific data at a different scale. Which means go out with the shovel, take a peek. There are tons of interpretations currently available, over 180 across Idaho right now. They give numerical and categorical ratings for each interpretation. As I mentioned, some are worded as a positive, as a suitability, and some as a negative. Next slide. There's probably already several interps that might be of interest to you. There's a national suite of them. They're broken down into these categories: security, engineering, forestry, grazing lands, military, soil health, urban water management systems. So you'll get these for everywhere that there's published mapping. For this part of Idaho, the grazing lands folder in particular has a lot of interest as far as like travel and mobility, fencing, mechanical site prep, potential for damage by fire, soil restoration projects. There's an interest for that, which tells you which soils would be more resilient after degradation. Next slide. There's also regional interps for specific agencies or needs over the years, and new ones can be developed. So some examples that are regional: we have a hops interp, a newly released nitrate leaching one. We have one for soil habitat for valley fever. So the new ones are best developed when it's a multidisciplinary group. It's tested by multiple people. So I'm working on one, which I'm going to share with you next. Next slide. Okay, so this is a new one in draft. I've got a working draft. It's not available online yet. It's a Slickspot site suitability. So for those of you who are not familiar, Slickspots are these salty, barren-looking little mini plant microfeatures peppered across the landscape. I've seen them. These stellar examples with peppergrass growing on your mountain home. They're of interest to some of our partners because some of these Slickspots support a TNE species commonly known as Slickspot peppergrass, or by its plant code LIPA for short. So my interp is not saying that wherever you get a green polygon that there's LIPA. I'm just saying that you have the soil properties to create a Slickspot. All right, so look how I came across this idea, besides hearing LIPA conversation among natural resource people, was there. I noticed there seemed to be some inconsistencies in the mapping. Some areas, these Slickspots were teased out as a named component, as miscellaneous land type. Some they were not identified. Some had a soil, and then some. If you look at the imagery, there's very suspicious, similar looking landscapes where it's not acknowledged at all. So then when I started reading more and looking at Fish and Wildlife's files, which is what the map is on the right, bottom right, that's Fish and Wildlife, where they said that peppergrass in these Slickspots presence are. The hash is supposed to be, I think, the current full extent, and the yellow is critical habitat. And then the map on an excerpt from our SSURGO data, where we had Slickspots identified in the map unit name. So you can see we don't have full overlap there. So that's why I was developing this interp to try to tease out the full extent of the Slickspots. Next slide. So yeah, so I built this one from scratch. So usually when we're doing an interp, we start with a literature review, get a feel for what properties of the soil are pertinent. And then we developed a decision matrix and scoring scheme. So this is the first 6 things that I looked at. The MLRA, for example, which that stands for Major Land Resource Area. These are ecological concepts similar to Bailey's ecoregions. If you want to know more, you can see our Ag Handbook 296, more detail. Then I pull the number of climatic factors, precip, temperature. A clay pan is very common in these Slickspots. That's what's helping me create the ponding. So I wanted ones that had what we call an argillic, which is like a clay pan, and then an abrupt textural change. It's pretty common to find very thin, like silt loam surface, and then bam, like 40–50% clay right beneath it. So that's what we call an abrupt. Next slide. So I had some chemistry, the sodium absorption ratio, calcium carbonates, durapans, common feature in this part of the world. Those are cemented horizons, and they're cemented with silica and or carbonates. And it's just another restricted like the argillic that can help create that ponding or the Slickspot development. Slope is in there because it's pretty flat. pH, because it's got so much, hot chemistry, pHs are usually fairly alkaline. But I definitely wanted to weed out anything acidic, so I rated anything in the 6 is pretty much 4. Salinity, gypsum content, and then sand. These are pretty fine soils that usually very either silt or clay dominated. So if there was greater than 70% sand, I designed the intern to penalize the soil. Next slide. So here is the first draft results. You're looking at Southwest Idaho, and then the line there down the middle, that's the state line in Malheur County, Oregon, on the bottom left. And so this is, like I said, a suitability. The green are well suited, the red are poorly suited for slick spot formation. The red polygons you see, I had got from Fish and Wildlife's documents that were available online of some hotspot areas. So I used them as my control to kind of try to test my results of do I like what it's spitting out. And I think they aligned fairly well. Pretty pleased with this first draft so far. Like I said, this is a work in progress though. If this piques anybody's interest today and you'd like to know more, files, get with me. Great. Okay, next slide. Okay, so now onto some newer interps that are published that you can access on Web Soil Survey. Hops, I did this one last year. I borrowed heavily from Washington's, but I tweaked it a little bit for Idaho. So hops, in Idaho, we're the second largest producer in the country. The largest hop farm is in Idaho. Production in 2023 totaled 104 million pounds for the tri-state area, Idaho, Oregon, Washington. That's up 2% from the 2022 crop. So people are enjoying their beer. Here's the first 7 parameters of the properties that this interp is looking at. We've got slope, frost-free days, elevation. Next slide. Okay, more. So the one that I'll point out, I added that 14th one. That wasn't in the original launch version. When I was doing the literature review, I saw it constantly mentioned about solar exposure being very important for the growth of hops in the minimum of 15 hours. So I did an index for all the surveys in Idaho based on their average latitude and gave it a score. Hi. So here is, I ran it on the entire state of our published data. You'll notice that there's a lot of red. And that's because a lot of our soils are cold, frigid cryoc that we mentioned earlier. So that's a limiting factor in a lot of Idaho. But you'll see most of our best growing areas are in the Snake River Plain there. And then there's a few pockets up north. Next slide. So here's a fun snapshot. For those of you that don't know, hops is not a rotational crop, and that's due to the great investment the producer has to put in for the infrastructure, for the poles and the cables to grow it. So this snapshot is over by Wilder, Idaho, which is a hot spot for hops growing. And the image on your left, it says 2012. So the green fields are hops. And then if you contrast that with the image on your right, 10 years later, look how much it's expanded. The hops have, are taking over that whole area. So just goes to show that obviously our producers agree with what the interp is saying, that soil properties there are conducive to hop production. Oh, here's another newer interp available for Idaho. In some cases, soil can be our savior, or it can house deadly things. A lot of our antibiotics are derived from soil organisms, and then also some pathogens. So for this, valley fever is a respiratory disease. It's caused by a fungus that lives in hot, dry, salty soils. And it becomes a problem when the fungal spores get aerosolized and carried in the wind and you inhale them. It can cause anything from flu-like symptoms to death in people with compromised immunity. It's most famous in Arizona, California, that part of the world. However, as our climate is shifting, it has the potential to spread into across the West. The image on your right there, that's from CDC, and that's showing valley fever reports. The states in gray, including Idaho, choose not to track and report it. Although I would point out the very suspicious donut hole that Idaho sits in has all of the neighboring states have had some cases. So this is just another reason why reducing soil wind erosion was a good thing. So here's an example output of that interp for the entire state of Idaho. You'll notice there's some pretty suitable areas, especially in southeast Idaho, where this pathogen could potentially make a home. And one of our other newly available interps on web soil survey for Idaho is a nitrate leaching potential in irrigated ground. Shawn did a whole lunch and learn on this just a couple months ago, and we made a recording, goes into great detail. So for those of you that are interested in water quality, check that out. The links are in the documents that Tasha dropped into the chat. And that's what I got for our latest interps. So just like I said, example, new ones can be developed to meet needs of customers. So I want to hear from you of, if there's any interps that aren't available yet that would be of interest.
All right. Excellent job. And real kudos to you, Shanna, for taking a shot at the Slickspots. That is kind of a tough one.
Yeah.
There's a lot going on in there. So great. Really, really good to hear. And it's nice to share with folks too, this work. I do think we've got time for a 5-minute break. We will be back. How about 2:02? All right, looks like we've got 2:02 and we're ready to go. And Jonathan Diaz-Cruz has volunteered to be the first of the MLRA leaders to present to us about ongoing soil survey projects in his part of the world. So I am going to present slides for him, and I'll let him take it away.
Hi everybody, Jonathan Diaz, Soil Survey Office leader in Ontario, Oregon. We covered most of the Snake River Valley in the Idaho portion of the state, of our area. And yes, I'll be updating a little bit on what we did this past year and our plans for the upcoming years.
And one moment.
Yeah. So this is basically what we're going to be talking really quick about. It will be the mapping that we did during 2023, our plans for 2024, and our plans up to the completion of soil 2026 and beyond. This year, the Ontario Soil Survey Office mapped about 110,000 acres. This is exclusively focused up in Malheur County in Oregon. We currently have initial soil survey left to be completed, so that's our main priority. Crew also assisted the Moscow Soil Survey Office with some mapping in the Boise forest in July. And for next year, our plan includes 155,000 acres in the western portion of our northern Malheur survey, and depicted by the image in there. Our red area is our current initial survey, and the extent in yellow of our office mostly going through the Snake River Valley all the way to Craters of the Moon and almost Burnley.
Yep.
Yeah. And yes, through 2026, our main focus is to finish up this initial soil survey. And from that point on, we're listening for projects, for potential project proposals to include in our long range plan post 2026 after the completion of our main project.
Excellent. And so just so folks know, everything that's outlined in yellow is where Jonathan's area of responsibility is. That is his major land resource area for his work, and they're finishing up the stuff in red. So and assisting the folks from Moscow in some of their forest land mapping. So awesome. Thank you, Jonathan. So we'll be looking for volunteers from the MLRA leaders to someone to be next here, or I could pick on somebody.
Hey, Shawn, I've got a quick presentation on the regional level if you want.
Yeah, you bet, Dan. Go for it. I think you're able to share. Let me know if we need to change any permissions here.
Here, let me try real quick. See if this will work.
Yeah, we're starting to see your screen. Yep.
Perfect. All right, so I'll just, these are kind of some slides from our management team meetings, but I'll breeze through these here real quick. So quick introduction, I'm Dan Perkins. I'm the Senior Regional Soil Scientist for the Northwest region based out of Bozeman, Montana. So as Shawn and Shanna and everybody's kind of highlighted, we're on the inventory side of all the products that they've been highlighting this afternoon, which has been excellent, by the way, Shawn. This has been a great presentation so far. So let me continue on here. So this is our area. Let me see if it's, here we go. This is what we have for Idaho right now. Our regional area actually covers all of Washington, Montana, Wyoming, Colorado, and then the larger portions of Idaho and Oregon. So these are the offices we have that are working or currently working in Idaho right now. So you'll hear from most of these folks on this list here from Idaho Falls, Ontario, Moscow, and then Pasco. This is kind of just to quickly highlight how we manage our teams within the soil science division. So our technical team is mostly made up of our local technical specialists. We then propose projects through that tech team up to the management team, which includes regional level and people like Shawn for approval of projects all the way up to board of advisors, which is where the state conservationists and the higher up folks kind of make recommendations or advice based on those projects. So as projects come up, this is the best way to get on these lists is through those tech teams with those local offices who you're going to hear from our local office leaders now. Quick overview of who's in our regional office. We've got Eva Muller, who is our regional director. And then we've got our quality control, quality assurance staff there in Bozeman, Portland, and in Lakewood. So we're kind of spanned out throughout our region. Some changes to staffing in our MLRA offices. We were able to add 2 ecologists this year, one in Ontario, one in Pasco. So we're kind of getting some coverage around in surrounding Idaho, which is good. We've added 2 soil scientists in Ontario earlier this year and a new soil scientist in Dillon, Montana, who is actually working in portions of Idaho during the summers. We've also added 2 soil data quality specialists. Paul Reinflesch was in Lakewood, Colorado. We picked him up through a reorganization, and Daniel Wood is a new hire based out of Powell, Bozeman. And then Margie Patz, as of this week, is actually moving up to Shawn's old stomping grounds, up to Alaska.
Wow.
One thing that I just want to highlight real quick, and I do need to probably reach out to Steve Campbell and Shawn on the side on this, is that some of the naming conventions are going to be changed in NASAS to reflect the new regions. So former Region 1 and Region 4 are now officially named the Northwest Region. So a lot of the NASAS groups and stuff are going to be changing. That won't affect most of the people on this call, but a few people of the NASAS user groups, we're going to have to kind of coordinate that merge over. That has to be done by the end of March. So we'll be reaching out about that here in a little bit. That's also going to change some of the office codes. So an example there of what used to be one IDF for Idaho Falls is now Northwest IDF.
Okay.
As people have kind of been talking about, we have this 2026 initiative. This was something that was set up through headquarters to have every acre mapped by 2026. There are some national instructions that follow along with that. We can share that if anybody's interested in seeing it. But this kind of set up the line work to set out 3-year projects to get everything mapped at an appropriate scale based on the land use. Here's some web-based reports that folks can look at if they need for 2026. This also is a good place to get some technical soil service reports. There's also an interactive map for the 2026 initiative that highlights the survey areas, the boundaries of those projects, and the years of completion and the class of project that's going to be completed. And I can share this, Shawn, if we need for any kind of links.
Okay.
And yeah, from here, it's kind of just a quick overview of the regional level. So we're going to kind of move into some offices. They're going to report progress like Jonathan did from 2023, and then kind of their plans for 2024 and beyond. And like Jonathan highlighted, some of our offices are full on 2026 initiative. So we're really looking to build those long range plans now with as many of these partners and folks on this call that are using soil survey information and have a critical TSS or update work or something that they would like to propose.
All right.
That's
Thanks.
all I got.
Thanks, Dan. And yeah, sorry the weather got in our way, and you know, we kind of planned this thing around having you and several other folks here in person, but I'm real glad that you decided not to tempt fate with this storm.
Yeah, I am too. It's pretty nasty here right now. It's howling. So yeah.
Is it? Okay.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Thanks, Shawn.
So yeah, I didn't have you better coordinated on the with the kind of order of things here, but really glad that you decided to join virtually. And so at any rate, do we have was there an order that you were hoping the MLRA leaders would go in?
Nope. Whoever wants to jump in next can jump in.
Okay.
Shawn, I can give it a try. The last agenda I saw had me first, so I was kind of ready.
All right. Well, I'd say take it away. It should let you just share at will, Brian.
Yeah. Are you able to see the slides?
Came up. Yep. Looks good.
Okay. So I'm Brian Gardner at the Moscow Soil Survey Office. And just going to report a little on what we did and what we have planned for the immediate future, I guess. Get it to advance. There we go. So just to introduce the office area and staff a little bit, this is a map of the area, the various MLRAs or portions of MLRAs we cover, and the subdivisions of those. That's the Canadian border in the north and the Boise foothills in the south. So it's kind of a big spread out area. Then the team is myself and Key Inspect here in Moscow, Scott Bear and Coeur d'Alene. And in this particular picture, we've got our friend from Pasco, Kelley Paup-Lefferts, who is helping us out on a soil sampling expedition in the Paup National Forest this past summer. We get a lot of help recently from our sister offices. Ontario, as was mentioned, did some head-on collection work for us. Kelley and folks from Pasco did some of that as well, and also helped with the soil sampling effort. And then, as you'll see, we've got this large area of forest land, national forest land in the center of the state that this office is technically responsible for. And Carla and the folks at IDF have helped take a little of that off our hands to get some of that all done. So the projects we have, as was described, we got this 2026 thing. It's our biggest area is this ID 700, the South Idaho forests. It's all not on right now. The portion that we're taking on is about 4.5 million acres. That's with the portion that Carla's taking cut off. We also have some other, mostly Forest Service ownerships, like this Wallowa Whitman National Forest stuff in Oregon that we're working on as well. The projects for 2024 are to finish up the Payette National Forest portion of that ID 700, and then keep collecting head-on data on the Boise National Forest portion, and then also to wrap up this Hells Canyon project in the Wallowa Whitman Forest. So this is just a map showing the stuff outlined in black is the active projects, and the stuff in blue, 2026 stuff that we're responsible for. So talking about the Payette project, the fieldwork for that was done back in 2022. I mean, that was the last summer we went to the field on it. Since then, for this stuff in central Idaho, we're kind of using a digital soil mapping approach. We collect all these pedons, we put them in the GIS or an R and kind of cook up a model of the soil distribution, and using other models to kind of dice the landscape up based on climate, aspect, slope steepness, basic properties like that, and create map units kind of on the fly that way. And so far it's been working out fairly well. And so this Payette portion, we're going to finish creating the vector product, the polygon map from all that digital stuff. And we got to finish that and all the NASA's data that's going to stand behind it this year. We want to try and post that part of ID 700 October 1st, 2024. So we have to kind of have everything ready to go through QA by April of this year. And that is what we're going to do. The Boise Forest is our ongoing field work right now. We were there this past summer, and we'll be there probably the next 2 summers, continuing to collect information to again do this kind of modeling approach that then gets turned into the vector map at the end. Like Jonathan said, we got help from him and help from the Pasco guys, trying to maximize the number of head-ons we could get, and see how busy everybody is. Maybe I can ask for help again. And then finally, the Hells Canyon, and there's similar projects. There's one for the Eagle Cap Wilderness. There's one for a portion of the Selway Bitterroot. They're not going to have field work involved. We're just kind of going to extend in existing mapping that is around those areas based on GIS and best professional judgment and that kind of stuff. That's how that Hells Canyon project is going to be completed, and it should be done this year, I think. It's just not really scheduled to go to post until October 1st, 2025. But we probably need to get it out of the way just to make sure we can get to the others that are still out there. And we do have some other stuff going on in the background that's not 2026, just some small things that don't take a lot of time. We've got this Northwest soil moisture regime study that's been ongoing for a while now, and we kind of work with the grad student that's here at Moscow. She does data collection around here. She has sites all over the place. I think most of my sister offices deal with her too, but seem to spend some time with her in the field. And then we do have an ongoing water table monitoring project on the floodplain of the Pend Oreille River in northeast Washington. That's been out there for several years now. Heard on the last, the guys went out and collected the data back in October, and the last thing I heard was some of the batteries are starting to die on the data loggers. So I guess they've been out there long enough that it may be over. But we left them out there one more year in hopes that we'll get some more data, and then we'll have to pull them all in probably. And then finally, Shanna and perhaps others did a very thorough review of the soil surveys in Idaho, looking for deficiencies compared to standards set out in the handbook. And lo and behold, found about 35 projects that would be active up here. some of those are fairly simple to take care of. So we're hoping to kind of pick up a few of those as we have time along the way too. So thanks for doing that, Shawn. That's the kind of thing we needed to do for a while. And so I guess that's kind of the end of what I had. I don't know if you want to take questions now or wait till the end, whatever you like.
Well, Brian, I was wondering if you could clarify something for folks that when you talk about a Class 5 project, can you explain briefly what that is?
Maybe. to me, the Class 5 project means is we are going to the field and generating a map based off field data. So there's a more technical definition than that, but that's kind of what it is in my mind. Or excuse me, the Class 5 is the one where there is no field data. Class 4 is the one where we are going to the field and building those models and trying to do something like that. The Class 5 is not, there's not going to be a field visit, just all in office.
Okay, so that's almost a pre-mapping project then.
Yeah, really, they both are, but the
Right.
Class 4 is just a little better.
Right. Minimal data, but okay.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, I think we'd be okay to take additional questions if people had them for Brian. How good are you dealing with awkward silence, Brian?
Fine for me. I can stop sharing.
Okay. And then I guess we'd be looking for Kelley or Carla perhaps to.
Yeah, happy to start, Shawn.
All right.
Let's see. Now I gotta get the sharing work. So can people see this presentation?
Yep, it just came up. Looks good.
All right. Well, my name's Kelley Paup-Lefferts. I'm the MLRA Soil Survey Leader here in Pasco, and I'm going to chat a little bit briefly about our activities here in Pasco. So first, this is kind of this is a map of the area of responsibility that we have for this particular office. As you can see, basically it's most of Eastern Washington outside of that Northeast section that Brian gets to enjoy. But also some areas in Oregon and also West Central Idaho. And Brian referenced MLRA areas, of which in Idaho, the one assigned to us is MLRA 9, but in Washington, we cover 6, 7, 8, and 9. Currently, the staff in this office consists of myself and Alec, our ecologist here. Alec came on board in June and has started off running very well. On the next slide, I'll tell you kind of what we're doing in regards to his and my work. One additional duty I have is, in addition to my office soil survey leader duties for this office, I'm also the current acting soil survey leader for the Olympia and Mount Vernon office. So that's added a little bit more to my plate. And then we do have plans to add another soil scientist to this office, but currently we don't really have a timeline on that. Okay, so fiscal year 24, if needed, this office will likely assist Brian over there in the Boise National Forest project. As Brian highlighted, we assisted last year with the project and with the soil sampling on the Payette. So yes, Brian, we are currently looking at setting some time aside for you to help you on the Boise.
Right.
And then in regards to soils 2026 projects that have been discussed previously, this office directly is charged with the Hanford Atomic Reservation area, is just here in the Tri-Cities area. And then also an area in the Umatilla National Forest wilderness area that actually encompasses Washington and Oregon on that. And the plan is for Hanford to hopefully get it pretty much tied up and done by the end of this fiscal year. If not, we will have it completely done by next fiscal year. And as soon as we complete the Hanford project, we would be diving into the other Soils 2026 project, that Umatilla National Forest Wilderness area. Now, with the added responsibility of the Olympia office, they have a project called the South Chehalis River Floodplain Project that we will be completing this year as well. There is not a lot of work left on that project, but it needs to be wrapped up. So that's another project that we will be doing. The Olympia office over there is currently working on a project developing a soil survey product for the Olympic National Park. Last year, they lost the ecologist that has been working on that project. And so Alec, our new ecologist, is full board, feet first, jumping into the world of developing ecological sites. And he will be developing those for that particular project. And the development of them will be completed this year. And then it will be entered into our review process. So we will have those draft ecosites ready for the National Park Service this year. And then so that was kind of a short and sweet presentation. I just kind of wanted to follow up the other things that people have highlighted, that, you know, even though we have these project priorities that we have to work on, we're always available for feedback on our soil survey products and ideas for projects to actually improve the product. You know, these tech teams that Dan mentioned are a great avenue for information to get to through whomever reaches out to us, because they are the team that kind of develops the project, and then they'll also create the priority of the projects that have been developed. As Brian highlighted, you know, they created a lot of projects, or found a lot of projects on the older soil surveys to update their data. And one of the things you have to do is prioritize those. So the tech team kind of does all that, and then we get the blessing from the management team as to what projects will go forward. But the tech team is a great resource and definitely a place to get ideas onto. And that was about it. And if there's any questions, feel free to ask now, or feel free to email me or call me.
Awesome. Thanks, Kelley. Do folks have questions for Kelley? I appreciate your joining us and presenting, Kelley. I know that you know your area of responsibility covers a lot of area that's not Idaho, but you are a big part of what's going on because you touch a lot of our surveys, and you're assisting with ongoing soil survey here. So I really appreciate you being part of this, and I thought it was good for folks to hear your name and listen to you speak a little bit. So if anybody has questions for Kelley, please ask.
And Shawn, I want to thank you for inviting me, because, you know, we used to be defined by political boundaries, but we're now not defined by those, but by geographical boundaries. And so I think a lot of people aren't aware that my area does stretch into Idaho. So yeah, this has been a great summit and a great idea. I hope it continues for the future.
Yeah, this being the first annual, I intend on having them every year, and kind of with the eye towards the 2026 date coming and going, and several people have talked about things that we've spotted in surveys that we'd like to address and assist with. And so, at any rate, it's all really good. I think these meetings can just get better and better over time.
Yep.
Carla, are you out there?
I am.
All right.
Okay, good
Good.
afternoon. Are we good? Can you see, Shawn?
Yeah, you bet.
Okay.
Looks good.
Okay. So I am Carla Rebernak. I'm the office leader over in Eastern Idaho. Here's our crew from left to right. We have Zach, our ecologist, and then Nick and Caitlin and myself. We're the soil scientists. And then Bryce Griffiths on the right is also a soil scientist. He works from the Soda Springs office. As mentioned, our charge as an office is to manage and support soil survey and ecological site activities. And sometimes this is new data, as mentioned, and sometimes it's improving the quality of our existing soil maps and ecological sites. So this map shows, I think it was from our yearly report, but I think it shows just how much data our office touches in Eastern Idaho there. Doing this kind of work requires field work, GIS work, and then database work. And we put all that data through quality control, quality assurance to meet standards. And then, as mentioned earlier, we post it every year. We post to Web Soil Survey. So this is what was posted in 2023 from our office. And it's over 350,000 acres. So as mentioned, some of it's new data. So one project I wanted to highlight that was new data was for the INL, the Idaho National Laboratory. This is in the Snake River Plain, east of Arco. They had a hard copy manuscript of the soil survey, but they requested spatial and tabular data for their project use. So we secured an environmental compliance permit and were escorted around the area to do field work. And it was an interesting project. One, for all the cultural artifacts are still intact out there because this land has been, has high security. And then, but we also found some pretty significant hydrology has been altered out there through their flood control practices to protect the laboratory. So it was interesting from the ecological standpoint of some of those sites that have been mapped out there. They're probably not coming back under the current conditions because of the alterations they've made. So all this data was posted to Web Soil Survey in 2023, 268,000 acres of new data. And as INL was a new project, I wanted to highlight a couple of our update projects. So this one was on the Fort Hall Indian Reservation, and they had some issues where they were the tribes had some areas that were important for their bison grazing, and they also had a fish hatchery, but the previous inventory showed some issues with water table depths and organic materials, some salt affected soils. So we did field work there and worked with the tribes to improve data in those areas. And that was 50,000 acres posted in 2023. And through this work, 6 new soils were identified and described, and we worked with the Language and Culture Preservation Department to choose names for those 6 soils using their language and with meanings significant to the tribes. So our Public Affairs Division came and recorded an interview, and this is Nolan Brown on the right and from the Bannock tribe, and Bryce is on his left. And Nolan recited a quote during the interview from an elder stating, "We are the land and the land is us." And I thought that really expressed their appreciation for this opportunity for the tribes to name these soils in honor of their people and using their languages. So the names are listed here. I won't pronounce them. Some are in Shoshone and some are in Bannock. So you can keep an eye out for the final production of that interview. Some other field work we completed in 2023 summer was for the update of 11 map units in Caribou, Bannock, and Franklin soil surveys. These surveys were mapped at a time when the soil scientists were only charged with one county at a time, and it didn't really matter what the county next door did. Currently, we take a larger picture approach and make sure that our map units and concepts carry over those county lines and don't duplicate efforts. So this project harmonized 11 different map units into 2 map units with updated ecological sites, and that was just under 40,000 acres. Challenges for work like this are gaining permission from a multitude of landowners for field work, as this aerial photo shows. And then I just have put some examples there of the type of data we collect at each site. The top sheet shows site data like collection, climate, landform, vegetation, and then the back is the soil description, the horizons and their properties. Summary of the ecological site work completed in 2023. Our ecologists wrote 6 new site descriptions. They're listed here. They cover the Lost River Mountains in central Idaho. These are all draft status, awaiting approval to provisional. We also collected some tier 2 and 3 data, which is the really extensive data where vegetation is clipped and weighed for production. In technical soil services, we provided 218 hours as an office in a lot of different settings, including local high schools, soil health workshops, tribal reservations, and others. So what's ahead this winter? We'll be doing the GIS and database work for all the field work we did last summer. And then we'll go through that quality control, quality assurance process again in preparation to post that data to Web Soil Survey in 2024. So it's a yearly cycle. We just repeat it. Zach will also be writing 8 to 10 new draft ecological sites, focusing on the Bear River Range and finishing up the Lost River Mountains. Field work for 2024 will be another harmonization type project for map units in Power, Bannock, Fort Hall, and Franklin soil surveys, as well as continued data collection to support ecological site development. I just threw this slide in during this meeting this afternoon because we are also a part of the 2026 initiative. I was trying to target the audience here and thinking that they were only most concerned with the private land and where our programs apply. But I would be remiss to not mention that this is also a large part of our work, is the field work to fill in those holes. In Shanna's demonstration of the interpretations, there were, if you noticed, especially on the hops map, it was a lot of red in there, and there were some holes in the middle. Those are the holes we're working to fill in to make a continuous inventory for the US. So we're doing different levels of products for that to meet the needs of the users. As Brian mentioned, some of them are a little higher level, some are traditional soil surveys, and some of them are modeling efforts. So this it is about 9 million acres all together there in the middle of Idaho. That is all I have. If you have questions, there is our contact information.
Excellent presentation, Carla. And in case folks haven't kind of gotten the drift, the MLRA leaders and staff do a tremendous amount of hard work. And it's not just physical, everything that Carla's talking about that happens during the everything they're dealing with and making sense of the data right now is it can give a person a real brain cramp. You know, it's a lot. It's a lot, and they do a fantastic job. And so it's so important for people to hear what you're up to. I just a note. I'd like to talk sometime later, Carla, about Bear Lake saline sub-irrigated.
You bet.
That could check a box for me on some other stuff that we're working on that is interesting in terms of hydric soils and redoxomorphic features and their failure to develop. So
yes.
Yeah.
I should mention that we do have my office has about 150 currently identified update projects. When we complete all of our initial Meet This 2026 initiative, we have lots of work ahead of us, but that doesn't mean that we're not open to a prioritization of those projects or adding new ones to the list. Yeah, we're all ears.
Yeah, and I appreciate you mentioning the business of different surveys done at different times. It's a big deal, and I know you guys have been very conscientious about areas that you're working on and how they join with existing surveys and making sure that data is in harmony across political boundaries and so on. So it's really appreciated. Anybody with questions for Carla? I think we're gonna transition here to. This has been mentioned a bit. The update projects. Yeah, so Shanna and Tasha and I have been working on some update projects. You know, looking at some of the soils data that we use and questions that we get asked oftentimes raise more questions, and you look into things and spot stuff that we feel that needs to be addressed. And so we've done some legwork to look at some potential update projects. These stem from a variety of reasons why these need to be done. The published date for a lot of Idaho's soil surveys is more than 20 years old. And while the vast majority of that data is sound, data standards have changed. We'll give you an example of that. County-based surveys completed at different times and by different personnel sometimes show inconsistencies at survey boundaries, and Carla touched on that a little bit. And while it might not seem like a big deal to other people, it can be a big deal to folks involved in farm bill programs, and it can create some issues in terms of conservation planning. So we have some areas that may use map units that lack sufficient soil data population, and these types of potential update projects seem to be some of the most obvious. And we'll focus on miscellaneous areas, but yeah, miscellaneous areas and ecological types or sites are some of the key ones. So there's a large number of update projects stored in the National Soil Information System, or NASIS. They're organized by soil survey area, and they're searchable with using the project ID. Not all of them, like as was mentioned earlier, these things have to have priority set for them. And so that, you know, that gets decided upon by the tech team and the people like myself and folks that have a vested interest in using the data. Maybe those are Forest Service folks or BLM people or our conservation districts. So at any rate, while we've got a lot identified in here, they can only be handled one at a time and have to be prioritized. Go ahead. So we've been looking at some projects that are related to use of unapproved miscellaneous land types. Back in the day, there were several miscellaneous land types that were used that were showing up in soil surveys, like blown out land, just as an example. Or in some areas, you know, if you're looking at a soil survey, they utilize spot symbols, or what they might call ad hoc symbols, to indicate wet spot, stony spot, source of gravel, etc. And in some cases, you see a lot of spot symbols in some places. For instance, if there's a lot of wet points in a non-hydric map unit, you have to ask the question: do we need to have a hydric component in a map unit? You know, what happened there? Sometimes there's mismatch of data across political boundaries, and a lot of that's just, again, based on vintage of the survey. Some of them we've had missing ecological site information. Some utilize soil variants, which that's just not an accepted practice anymore. And I'm not going to go into details on that, but so the focus is on data updates related to NRCS programs and conservation planning. Really, where you're lacking data, that's a big deal. But again, the focus and the prioritization is going to be on those things that affect conservation planning. So miscellaneous areas, and you can look up the official definition of these in the National Soil Survey Handbook. But long story short, have no soil or are heavily disturbed. The National Soil Survey Handbook recognizes 20 valid miscellaneous land types. And some of the older Idaho surveys contain some that aren't recognized, like alluvial land, blown out land, cinder cone, marsh, slick spots, terrace escarpments. So these are areas that when you run into these, there's no data associated with them. It can create problems. Go ahead. Here in this example, this is a polygon of something called wet alluvial land. And you click on it, there's an example from SoilWeb. You click on it and it says hydric no, and there's no data associated with it. That can be a real problem. And something that needs to be addressed sooner than later. So things like that get top of the priority for update projects. And you can't see it, but Jonathan's across the table from me, nodding his head very enthusiastically. And that's in your neighborhood, basically. So yeah. Lava rock land. This is an interesting deal. Carla, in your part of the world, here this is the name of the map unit is lava rock land. They use a miscellaneous component type of rock outcrop, which is acceptable, right? But it's caught my eye because I've actually had to deal with this and going out and doing some hydric determinations that they were right next to an area where this was mapped. And it definitely supports vegetation. And then we've found it in areas that are obviously being farmed. And so at any rate, it's just another example of the type of thing you might find in looking at some of these miscellaneous or things that basically give you no data, and then identifying them to be elevated for an update project. So these are the point symbols or ad hoc symbols, spot symbols. These are the recognized ones that you might run into in a map. And in the old published surveys, these were used. They don't necessarily translate into soil components in the case of like marsh or swamp, where in some cases maybe we need to have a hydric component in a map unit. Now I've got an example of a wet one. Yeah, go ahead and flip the. So here's an example of a soil polygon. It's probably hard to see. On the left-hand side, you've got the soil map as displayed in Web Soil Survey, and you've got little symbols that show up. They kind of look like crow's feet. They're supposed to indicate marsh or wet spot. And when you look at them on the right, I've represented them in the GIS with these red spots. So that map unit in that survey has 20 polygon delineations and 40 wet feature points, but there's no recognized hydric components, and so that's not something that exists in NASAS as an update project. This is just the type of thing that some of our initial evaluation yielded, and something that we need to document. And I'll be contacting the MLRA leader on this one at some point. So just an example there. And then moving on, we've got some examples of things that we've looked at and collected some notes on. I'm going to let Tasha take over there.
Yeah, I'm going to talk about some of the specific update projects that we've been making progress on from the Boise State office. As Shawn was saying, a lot of these projects were originally identified by him and Shanna, and Shanna and I have been doing field work the last couple of field seasons to investigate and collect some on-site information. So blown out land is one of those miscellaneous land types found in the Idaho Soil Survey data. That is an unofficial term, and it doesn't provide accurate or valuable information. if a map unit has soil and is supporting a vegetation community. So we started with blown out lands because this land type is not very widespread. It's present in 2 survey areas, but only 5 map unit polygons for a total of about 600 acres, with all the map units located within a reasonable driving distance from Boise. So it just appeared to be the easiest miscellaneous land type project to fully document and update and check off before moving on to others. So the map shows the location of some of the blown out land polygons in pink in one of the survey areas. That's ID 704. And you can see one snapshot of one of the polygons over aerial imagery, where the yellow points correspond to soil notes that we took there. So in Twin Falls County, blown out land is a minor component of the map unit it's found in. The major component, the dominant soil, is Quincy soil, which is really coarse, sandy, and a weakly developed soil. So, we did an on-site visit, recorded several soil pit-on descriptions, and based on that, made a recommendation to change that blown out land minor to a soil with populated data. And in this case, an eroded phase of Quincy. In this area, there's a lot of human activity from dirt bikes that's disturbed that weakly developed Quincy soil. So the A horizon has been eroded pretty deeply, and especially on the bike trails that you see in the photo. So that eroded phase places emphasis on the fact that the loose sandy areas are largely due to land use and management. And then in the other survey area where this miscellaneous land type was found, in ID 708, Cassia County, blown out land was the dominant component in that map unit. So we took a different approach and recorrelated the map units to soils from the area legend, or merged those map units with neighboring soils if we verified that they did fit as the same soil. So that's just an example of how we started with some on-site investigations and fieldwork for update projects. But after meeting with Dan and regional MLRA soil survey leaders to discuss the best strategies for continuing work on update projects, we decided the best approach going forward is focusing our efforts on projects falling in one soil survey area at a time. And so this last field season, we focused on ID 665, which is Canyon County, right next door to Boise. This survey was originally published in the 1970s, and we currently have 8 update projects identified here. And so for the first field season, we focused primarily on 2 projects. Both are related to unapproved miscellaneous land types, and those are marsh and terrace escarpments. So in NASIS, all of the update projects are stored as tabular information, and related soil map units are tagged to the projects, and then that tabular data can be displayed spatially using SSURGO and ArcGIS. So these are just examples of some high-level maps that we created to help focus our fieldwork. And different colored polygons correspond to soil map units related to the 8 identified projects. And there are also point features to be investigated on here. So we turned these maps into georeference PDFs that we used in events and maps. And it's really neat. You can see, your real-time location in relation to the map units of interest on the ground, and that's really helpful. The bulk of the fieldwork for the original Canyon County soil survey was completed in the 1960s, so many more tools are available now since it was originally mapped, and it's just been really helpful with prioritizing and following through with updates. And this is an example of point data collected on site, including put on horizon notes, GPS points, and photos. We organize data by including our JPEG photos as attachments within a feature class in a GIS project, just to kind of store our documentation. So you could just select a point and scroll through photos associated with a site and a soil pet-on. And I have a couple examples of photos from the field that highlight the importance of these update projects. So this first one is a map unit that was labeled as a terrace escarpment. And along the whole length of this map unit, it's fully vegetated, which is a strong indicator that it's not miscellaneous land type. It's supporting plant life, and in this case, very large, mature plant life in the form of trees. And this photo shows a site where terrace escarpment map unit is extending out in a field, which is under crop production. It has a pivot on it. And when that terrace escarpment map unit is clicked in SoilWeb on the pop-up, again, you can see there's no data populated there in a pretty important high use area. So again, just emphasizes the need to update the map unit to a soil and have data populated for the area, which is growing plants under crop production. Our current status on these projects. So for terrace escarpment, we visited nearly 50% of the polygons on site this past field season. So all 68 polygons of terrace escarpment that were in ID 665 have been recorrelated to soils in the survey area legend. And we only made one spatial edit to split a large polygon into 2 different map units. But there are no more terrace escarpment polygons left in the ID 665 edited layer. And then for marsh, there are 17 total polygons in this survey area. We've just started the on-site work for this. We visited 2 polygons. And so more visits will be needed next field season to wrap up this project. So it's a work in progress, and it's not yet reflected in Web Soil Survey or the SSURGO data. It'll probably be a few years until that's the case. That's all I have to share. If there are any questions, I'd be happy to take them.
I have a quick question. Have you run into a situation yet where you think you need to identify a new map unit, or is existing map units on the legend covering so far what you found for the terrace escarpments?
For the terrace escarpments, the soils in the legend have been good options. Yeah.
Okay.
We're just dipping our toes into marsh, and it might be a little bit of a different story there, just because there aren't a lot of really wet soils in the Canyon County legend. So I think it's going to be different with that project.
Yeah. Okay. If you get to that point, please reach out sooner than later, because then we can start working on how to develop those.
Sounds great. Thanks.
Yeah, and I should just let everybody know that we're working with closely with Soil and Plant Science Division on these, and we're, as far as the state staff is concerned, we're just on the tip of this, and we're really excited for additional involvement from Jonathan and his crew, and working with the MLRA offices on some of these projects. Just it's needed, and it's a lot of good work to be done. Anytime somebody comes into a field office, or somebody's got an application for something, and the soil conservationist is running tools and having issues, it costs everyone involved a lot of time to figure out what to do with it. And so there's just a lot of really good solid work to be done, and we're just really looking forward to doing more of it. So
no, it's a great collaboration, Shawn. Like, I'm excited to see what this produces, because this is one of the first states to try it. So and we're not going to say no by any means. Like, we've got help, we're going to take it. So for sure.
Yeah, no, much appreciated. I'm not hearing any questions. We do have an hour on the agenda to hear from partners or anyone else about how they're utilizing our data or questions they have about it, and it's kind of wide open in that regard, and we did that purposely just to hear from folks and see what kind of ideas and data utilization we've got out there. Or for folks that use our data all the time, what's your go-to stuff?
Hi, this is Darcy with Department of Environmental Quality. Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am, loud and clear.
So I use your web soil survey data quite a bit. I do some watershed models to help grant applicants identify their pollutant load reductions. And I just want to say I've been doing that kind of work since probably 2006. And I just really want to thank you guys for all the work you've done, on these web-based tools. It is so much easier to get to the data I need now. I used to do a GIS project and try to get information out of SSURGO and StatsGo. And it's just the data I use the most is I need just fundamental soil texture a lot of times, but then I dig in and get K factors for erosion, and slope and just erodibility of the soils. And those are the data types that I typically use over and over. And you've just made it so easy for me to get to that information. I just want to thank you for that.
That's awesome. I'm glad to hear that, Darcy. That's some real solid go-to type information, K factors and soil textures. That's highly useful fundamental stuff, and I'm really glad that you're using it and able to access it easily. I do think we've improved over the years.
I would just add, Shawn and everyone else, thank you so much for all these amazing tools. I was in and out of teaching all afternoon, so I'm really glad you recorded this, and we'll revisit the recording. But we use your data through Google Earth with my research group at Boise State for all sorts of questions. It's a treasure trove for calcium carbonate content and soil depths and parent material. So thanks for all you do.
That's awesome, Jen. Thank you, and thank you for spreading the word and involving the young bright minds that you do. Really appreciate what you do.
Oh, well, thanks, and thank you and your staff for coming and helping with the soils class and for providing great jobs for for those bright minds when they finish. So keep us posted if on any new job offerings as well. So yeah.
Okay, all right, and hey, our dance card this spring's getting a little busy. If you've got a class you want us to step in on, let's talk.
Great, that would be fantastic. Got teaching geomorph right now, so.
Okay, excellent.
All right, great. Thanks so much.
All right, thank you. Speaking of Google Earth Pro, should we try that? All right, let's see if we can. Yeah. Let's see, there it is. Let me try sharing. And that screen right there. Let me get a pointer going on over here. All right, there's that map unit I was showing off in the slides. Which I believe is a recharge point. And this is the time slider in Google Earth Pro. I think folks have probably used this. Oh, it's going really well here. Okay. So going back to 1992, that area looked just like range ground. Up to 2003, same thing. And there's other of these Kamama map units in here. You can see those KMs, and according to its OSD, lives in depressions and drainage ways and a few other spots. So that made sense. And somewhere in here, There you go. 2009 is just completely inundated, but it made sense that having looked this up, that it was a recharge area. One thing that's nice that you can do in Google Earth is any spot that you're interested in, you can zoom to. If you've stuck a pin in it, you can just double click on it. And here we've got the SoilWeb lines drawn in there. That KML file I drug into this spot here in Google Earth Pro called Places, and it just throws up the soils information. Like SoilWeb, generates sketches. And then if you click on one of the profiles, it'll bring up that whole page of additional info to give you the OSD. I don't think there's lab data on Pick a Pen that's available. But yeah, the whole shoot and match comes up just like you get in SoilWeb. So I think it's kind of nice. Another thing, if there's lab data nearby, like here's a lab data point for Crane Gulch that shows up. Oh, it's just an OSD data. There's no lab data associated with it. I believe some of these, if there is lab data associated with it, it shows up as a little hot link down here. But at any rate, just the utility of dragging SoilWeb into Google Earth Pro is kind of nice for its 3D visualization capabilities. The image slider is super handy. Just being able to see where the map units and components live on the landscape it's a nice feature. So sorry that didn't go as well earlier. It seems to be working like a champ now, but here, let me turn this back. I don't need to hog everybody's time. We were meant this time to be for any questions that our discussion folks had. So. Is there anything web soil survey that you wish that it would do that it doesn't do that you think of often?
This is Darcy again. Do you happen, I didn't know about those soil lab reports on web soil survey, so I'm going to look into those. But is there something that you have that could quickly get to kind of an average soil nitrogen or soil phosphorus concentration?
Those are so management driven that I don't think there's anything we could do for that.
Yeah, true. Okay, thanks.
You bet. Does anybody use the soil survey data for what they might think of as a novel usage, something that most folks just wouldn't think about?
Hey, I'm Katie Chambers. I'm the soil scientist on the Bridger Teton. There is something that I've been planning on developing is a pro map of including all the different types of interpretations that we use for the Forest Service with the SSURGO On Demand tool. I haven't got to that point yet, but I thought that would be pretty helpful to just have this ArcPro specific for the interpretations. I don't know if that's novel or not, but I just wanted to share that with you.
That sounds like a really good idea, is to create that project and have it available. Is that something you would make available and share so that other folks would have a easy access to it? So you're talking about like generating all of those interps and just having them in one spot.
Yes, exactly. And I thought that the whole forest could look at it, you know, such as the engineers as well as the fire folks, since there are some interpretations about how potential damage by fire. So I kind of, and I'm also getting a few new employees, and I thought that could be streamline the system of when we have a timber harvest unit come available, or that's going to be occurring, that they can look at this ARC Pro project and be able to develop maps quickly from that. So that was my thoughts of doing it, but I think it's going to take a bit of time to do that, but I think it would be useful, especially if we even had just some random, well, for one example is that there is a shooting gun range that was done, that is a permittee of the Boy Scout. And it appears that there is a potential wetland that they have been shooting over top of. So having that information of if that is hydric could quickly provide me information on how to process that information.
Yeah, that's definitely a use in management tool. Yeah, you bet. That's cool. Good stuff.
Hey, Shawn, this is Carla.
Yeah, Carla.
Since you have some web soil survey experts in the room with you, could someone show me how to use the select map unit tool from in the AOI menu in web soil survey? I guess in my mind, I want it to set the AOI to just the delineations of that map unit, but I can't seem to make that happen.
Let's see. So I don't know if I'm picking up what you're putting down here.
Do you want me to share web soil survey, or does someone there
Yeah,
want to?
go for it. And that way you can kind of point right to the thing that you're doing. Okay.
So I've selected Idaho and Custer County, and then I want to use this select map units. And maybe it just doesn't do what I think it should or want it to do, but that's what I want to know. What is it actually doing? So then I get this menu up here to select a map unit. Okay, and then what? If I hit set AOI, it just gives me the whole county. So that must not be what it's for. So where do you go from here from selecting a map unit?
That's a good question, because I'm typically I'm in the GIS environment a lot, and that particular tool in web soil survey is not something I use all the time. There's not something I use hardly at all.
Well, if someone could get back to me with an answer for that, I would appreciate it.
Well, so I'm curious what your soil map looks like, though, if you only select a few of those, because you've got it still loads everything.
Yeah,
right?
It loaded the whole legend and it loads the whole spatial. So I don't know what that option is for.
Shawn, this is Steve Campbell. I could address that if you'd like.
Wonderful.
Excellent. No, please do.
Hi,
please do.
Hi, Carla.
Hi.
Yeah,
we're playing. Go ahead.
So the only purpose of that select soil map units is for the reports. So if you want to get reports of all the components, so maybe you could go back to that select map units screen, and it just select a couple map units, and I can show you what actually happens there. Yeah, so now if you go to the Soil Data Explorer and then the Soil Reports tab over on the far right. And then if you could just run any report. And so rather than the report will just include the selected map units rather than all the map units in your AOI.
I see.
Yeah,
Okay,
so and that's pretty useful.
It is.
If you're just interested in the soil properties of one or two map units, it's pretty useful, but it doesn't do
Sure.
anything spatially.
Okay, all right. Well, if on my wish list of things I wish that Web Soil Survey would do, I think that would be handy.
So you'd like to be able to select all the polygons of those map units into your AOI.
Yeah, so like
Yeah.
when you're doing an update project and you want to see the extent, the spatial extent of, say, these Linoke map units, it would just be really handy to go in and check the ones you want to look at. I mean, there are other ways for us to do it. We have other tools to do it, but I just
Right.
think it would be a cool feature in Web Soil Survey as well.
I agree. That'd be a great enhancement of Web Soil Survey. Looks like it's taking a while to run that report.
Yeah,
for
it
you.
is. I'm going to stop sharing.
Interrupts always take
you
longer.
answered my question.
Okay.
Hey, Steve, I'm curious if when you do that, does it limit the number of brief map unit descriptions you get when you generate the report also?
Yes. So that AOA, if you go to that AOA inventory part of the soil reports, it will only, and you run the map unit description report, it'll only have those map units that you checked in that select soil map unit section.
Yeah, that could be useful just on that basis alone, because some relatively small AOYs, I'm always stunned by like just how many map units they can touch and how many pages in the report that takes up to get all the map unit descriptions in there.
Right. So you could limit the size of your report just by using the checkbox of the map units that you want to include in the report. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
No, that's great. Learn something new every day. That's awesome. Thanks for the question, Carla. That was a good one.
How about the results of that poll?
Oh, our pollsters. All right, let me share. Let's see. Can't see it. That was the wrong thing to do. Let's see. There we go. I fixed it. All right. So first one, I use the following to view soils data. Click all to apply. Web Soil Survey, SoilWeb, and Google Earth Pro. Looks like the majority is Web Soil Survey. And the response on SoilWeb and Google Earth Pro is a little bit higher than I thought it would be. That's cool. I use the following to analyze soils data: ArcPro, ArcMap, grass.
And transition to ArcPro, which is good since ArcMap's going away shortly.
Yeah, they're going to deprecate ArcMap. A little bit of an adjustment to make, going from ArcMap to ArcPro. Soil interpretation is, all right, everybody, aggregated soil properties used in a predictive fashion. And it's super awesome. So if you click that one too, you got that right. All right, so good stuff. I appreciate everybody attending this meeting. We will have one every year, and we want to hear what people think is important and our soil survey data, things that they might want to address, things that they want to do, products they might want to generate. If they've got an idea for an interpretation that they think would be useful and might be possible with the soil property data that's in our database, let us know. Definitely interested in that. that nitrate leaching potential interp that we've adopted, I have a lot of interest in that. That's been really good. I'd like to see us continue and get might be a while before we get a Slickspots in interpretation out there, but I think that's a possibility. Maybe we can ask Steve Campbell, since he's on the call, our soil scientist from our West Tech Center. Steve, you know any interpretations that are in the works that you're excited about?
Well, I was just contacted by New Mexico. They want to develop a drought vulnerability soil interpretation to help with the ranking on USDA conservation programs. So I thought that was kind of an interesting new development. And I'll keep everybody posted about that one. Okay.
And do we have one out there that other states are using and they're looking to adopt, or would this be brand new?
There is a national drought vulnerability soil interpretation, but what New Mexico was finding was everything was coming out severely limited for drought, and they wanted something with a little more subtle
sure.
divisions. Yeah, some more when you look at a national interpretation for drought vulnerability, you have such a huge variety of climates across the whole United States. They just want to make it more specific to that particular state, or it could be to the semi-arid and arid West. Just finer divisions.
That's
vulnerability classes.
Yeah, that the arid Intermountain West version might be what the type of thing that might get developed, huh?
Right. Yeah, exactly. Because we do have a national one already.
Yeah, I don't know if maybe other folks have if you run into anything that you look at and you think, well, that must have been developed in the Midwest or something because they're the East Coast, because it doesn't make any sense for Idaho or Oregon or Washington or wherever you're at. By all means, let us know, because these are the sorts of things that we can look at and ask, well, what would make sense for here? Like maybe the interp itself is valuable, but we need, say, an irrigated version of it, or we need a version of it that doesn't look at a certain soil property that is relatively meaningless here. The National Crop Commodity Productivity Index is an example of something that has been used nationally in some things and didn't make a lot of sense for the West, because of course the West ranks out really low using the model that they used at the time, because it didn't consider irrigated agriculture. And so just because a tool was developed and is available nationally, it doesn't necessarily mean it applies well all over the place. And so if you see anything like that and you think, this just does not work for Idaho, let us know. We really want to fix stuff like that and make more useful products for folks. Well, you guys, we are closing in on 3:30 here, and I'd just as soon give folks back their time if we don't have more things to discuss. And yeah, I'm running out of topics to try to spur on discussion. So you can blame it on me that this didn't go well. But at any rate, I'd like to call this meeting to a close unless we've got other folks with questions, and by all means, fire away.
Well, thank you, Shawn, for putting this together. This has been excellent.
Well, thank you, Dan. And like I've told you before, I hope at some point you can get that log removed from your head.
You show me a dull chainsaw, you can cut it off as soon as you want.
All right. Will there be beer involved?
There was a beer involved getting it on. There will be beer involved to get it off.
Excellent. All right. That could be just a real fine note to close on. I appreciate the sense of humor, Dan. All right. Well, hey, let's do it. Let's call it good. And we'll see if we can get this. This video is going to be excruciatingly large in size. We might have to chop it up into pieces, and we'll see what we can do about getting it put up for folks. So thanks again, everybody, for attending. Hope you found something useful here. We really appreciate your attendance, and the doors are our doors are open, so to speak. Let us know if there's anything that we can help you with. We would love to be of assistance.